there, it's Kevin with Gone Rogue Games, here with a discussion that I want to have because I've been asked a lot of questions about what makes a good Christmas present for a board game for people that might not necessarily be into board games. Now, I like to think of myself kind of a specialist in this topic because this is what I spend most of my time doing is introducing non-gamers to games. So, board games have come a long way since Monopoly. They've come a long way since Risk. And story time, before I start into this top 10 list of games that I think make great Christmas ideas, I want to tell you my experience with board games. So I come from a family that played a lot of card games. In fact, for New Year's, my mom would drag us over to her best friend's house and we would play card games. It was fun until I got into my teenage years. Then I was so upset that I was being dragged to some old people's house to play games all night. But we'd have a kind of a New Year's Eve party at my mom's best friend's house where we would eat lots of candy and other desserts all night long, just gorge ourselves and play card games and different dice games and whatnot. And so things like chicken foot, hand and foot, different things that use 52 card decks, old school board games, things that have been around for years and years and years. And I also grew up in a family that played Risk. We played Monopoly. If you're familiar with the LDS religion, there's a thing called Family Night, which is usually on Mondays that families are encouraged to spend time together for one night a week. And often we would play games. And so things like Apples to Apples, like I said, Monopoly, Risk. I'm trying to think of some other games we played throughout the years. And I didn't enjoy board games because of these experiences, because I came from a background of playing more in-depth games like StarCraft. I was super into StarCraft as a kid, and I was super into things like Magic the Gathering. So I started playing Magic the Gathering during Revised when I was in 5th grade, and it was hard to go from playing something like Magic the Gathering to a very sloppy board game system like Monopoly or a lot of the very high variance card games or dice games that existed during that time. So I always kind of turned my nose up to board games, and especially after I started a store, people would beg me. They'd play, Kevin, you got to try this board game. You got to come to board game night. You got to do this. Like, no, I am just not a board gamer. I like Magic the Gathering. I like a few other card games, but I'm just not interested in board games. And then eventually I gave in and started to play some of these modern era board games, and I was hooked because board games have come a long way since the Monopoly days. And there's a great documentary out there about how the German culture revolutionized board games. During the time in the Americas, board games were really focused on a lot of conflict and war and dice rolling. And there's a very, very funny ProZD. It was a very popular YouTuber that does a comparison between Euro games and American style games. And it's hilarious when he talks about American style games because very high variance, attacking things, moving things on the map. And I'm just not a fan a lot of times of that style of game either. But it took kind of like the German culture of revolutionizing how board games are played. It started with like Catan and then into Ticket to Ride and then into things like Seven Wonders. That have now, we have just an explosion of board games. Board games have never been bigger. There's never been such a scene. Millennials are really, especially older millennials, are really getting into board games. And it's just kind of it's kind of pressed the envelope of where board game designers keep getting better and better with games as they come out. So some of these are kind of older and classics at this point. Some are newer in this list, but all of them I think are great games to introduce people to board games, whether they be people that play board games now and might not have these board games, or people that are looking to get introduced to it, or like a family just wants, to have a game night. And I actually every Sunday I go and play board games over at my buddy's house. And there is like a kind of a threshold of games that I can take over there. I don't think that like medium heavy or heavy type games would fly over there. And I also don't like the super, super light games. So our go-to game of choice is Splender, where we play Splender each week. And typically I'll bring some other games over there. And I kind of make fun of it because I call them Robinson games. Those are games that I can actually bring over there that I don't want to flip the table because they might just be too complex, or they just won't get a good reception because or they'll just get the ADD kicks in, they get too distracted to read the rules or learn the iconography to actually sit through like a 45 to an hour and a half minute board game. So these type of games that I've chosen for this list are around 30 minutes, or most of them, I think all of them are 30 minutes or below. They have not so high complexity, but enough that you can still be engaged as like a Magic the Gathering player and still have fun with these games, and you can still find different strategies and tactics, but they won't be too complex to basically push away people that aren't looking for that sort of experience of really delving into more of a complex game. So without further ado, let's get in it to my top 10 list in no particular order. All these I think make great gifts. I'm not going to have like in the future, I'm going to do these more edited. I have a New Year's resolution to pick up some editors and really relearn how to edit videos, and I'll hopefully get back on the swing of things of making some higher production videos and stuff. For now, you just have to get me kind of rambling about stuff and showing these games. So the first one I want to talk about is Longshot. This one came out in, I think, last year. And this is a dice rolling game where you're a racing game as well. And so what you do on this game is you basically are rolling dice, and then the dice that are rolled depends on where you mark off on your either scorecard, or there's different horses out there, and they do different things here. So you can see this one has not been erased here. So you have this little scorecard, and so on your turn, someone rolls the dice, then everyone in turn order uses the dice to then mark something off on their scorecard that then affects the game. We have these little bottle caps here that when you get rows or columns, you can get a bonus. You can mark off a horse's jersey or its jockey, and that'll affect things. The jersey will allow you to bet on the horse in the later period of the game, and the jockey will allow you to, I can't remember, I'll have to remember things, but they do different things here to affect the game here. And then you can also use your money, because you start with money, to bet on horses with their odds right here of which horse is going to win the game. You can actually even buy a horse, so it shows all the actions you can do down here. And it is a very, very fast-paced game where you're just rolling dice, marking stuff off. You are getting excited about horses moving, because when you roll the dice that the horse moves a particular amount of spaces depending on this dice, and the color of the horse depending on this dice, and that is how the game works. And then of course you also have the scorecards that can actually mess with the game as well. So Longshot is really cool because there are of course strategy and tactics with it, but it is really just a kind of lucky betting dice game that, again, is really, these type of games typically do not keep my attention because they're too chaotic, they're too random, there is no strategy to them. But this one was really well done, so I can't recommend Longshot enough. I think it was just a great game that came out a few years ago, and it gets to the table quite often. Again, it's one that I can easily play with board gamers and non-board gamers alike, people that like racing games, people that don't like racing games, people that like dice games, people that don't. I think that this one fits that perfect bill of going across the board to find captivating audiences that will enjoy it. So I am a huge fan of flip and writes. I love flip and writes. I think, again, they are something that non-board gamers can like and enjoy. So there's roll and writes, there's flip and writes, there's other things. Basically what these are is using some sort of mechanic to do something like a deck of cards or dice rolls and then mark something off on a scorecard. This particular one by Pandasaurus is called Silver and Gold. So it uses the Tetris mechanic of, you have a deck of cards and you are going to mark this off on your scorecard. So you're going to have two scorecards in front of you at any given time, and they do different things. So you are going to draw a card from the deck. Everyone's going to do this simultaneously. So for this example, we get the 2 here, the 2 block, and you just mark it off somewhere on your scorecard. Now the X's allow you to mark off an extra space. The coins go towards people completing the coins. So the person that completes the first 4 coin row, the very first, gets a bonus, and then it goes on for like 5 rounds, and then at the end of the game, how many of these you've completed, because as soon as you complete a card, you get a new card. You score up all of your points that you've accumulated from completing scorecards, plus any bonuses that you might have accumulated across the game. So it's just a quick flip and write. You flip over a card, mark it off on your... There are a lot of games like this that are just using Tetris-y type stuff to mark off spaces on boards. I'm going to show you one I've picked further down the road for another game that I think does very well using this kind of Tetris mechanic. And this one I think is one of the better flip and writes. It's really, really quick. And it's, again, engaging, fun. There's strategy to it. Yeah, it's a good little card game, flip and write game that is super cheap, and again, it's perfect. This is a perfect game to introduce people to kind of flip and writes. You can go on more complex with flip and writes. There's things like Welcome To. I'm not thinking. I've played so many flip and writes, and now I'm not even thinking the other ones that I've played recently. But Welcome To is a very popular one that I'll have to showcase on this channel at some point. Again, like I said, I think that I play more board games this day and age than Magic. No, I'll go on big, like, splurges of playing a lot of Magic when I'm excited about it. But board games have been very consistent for the past like 3 and 4 years. I do not miss board game night. So it's one of my favorite things I look forward to every week. So Silver Gold, this one is a very good game that gets to the table quite often. Next up is, speaking in the genre of marking stuff on scorecards. This one's called Twice as Clever. There are 4 clever games now. So there's one called That's So Clever, then Twice as Clever, then I can't remember what the third one's called. And then the fourth one's called Clever Forever. Why? Clever Cubed is the third one, and then Clever Forever is the fourth one. And they're all really good. So basically on a flip and right, what you do is you're rolling dice. And how this one works is on your turn, you're going to be using 3 dice on your scorecard. So they'll go here. You'll roll one at a time, and you keep the dice around in your pool that are higher than the dice you choose. So you need to be strategic on what dice you keep. And then you mark it off on your scorecard based upon the color of the dice. And there are different restrictions of where you can put the dice, and so you have to be strategic throughout the game of where you put them and try to get these bonuses. And it goes through a series of rounds depending on player count. And then the inactive players get to use all the dice that you don't use. They get to pick one of the dice that goes to what's called the silver platter, which is one that you didn't use for your 3 dice, and they get to mark it off on their scorecard. And so again, it's a very fun, strategic. I mean, this is like, again, if you grew up with Yahtzee and you liked Yahtzee, these type of games are so much better than you just trying to get lucky to roll pairs and straights and things like that. So the Clever, I used to call it the Trevor Trilogy, but now there's actually 4 of them out there. All of them are super good. In fact, when I go over to my friend's house, we usually start with a roll and write and then play Splender all night because they are addicted to Splender. So next up is going to be 2 games that I think are different enough. This one just has been out for a couple of years. This one's called Point Salad, and the other one's called Point City. Now, Point Salad is super fun because it is a quick deck game or card game where super simple. You have a market of vegetables. So say there's 2 rows of vegetables right here, and then you have a deck of point cards, and whenever a card is taken from the market, then a point card replaces it, and then a new point card comes to its spot. And these are supposed to be vegetables. So on your turn, either you take a point card or you take 2 vegetables, and your point cards, they basically just score your points, and your score your vegetables, and your vegetables just go towards scoring your point cards. So like this one right here wants you to have a complete set. So for every complete set, you get 12. This one wants you to start to get more cabbage and onions, but it will punish you for getting peppers. And this one's going to want you to have a set of these 3 to score 8 points. And so throughout the game, you want to kind of find cards that work together, and the vegetables that then score your point cards. And this one's super fun. It's quick. It can be played over rounds. So it's like, instead of winner takes all for 1 round, you can just put down your points and then do it like 3 or 4 rounds, and then the person with the most points on average, or the total points over rounds, is can be declared the winner. It is a super fast, fun game that I find incredibly enjoyable for especially groups that don't have the kind of attention span for some of these longer harder games to learn. You can literally just take this out of the box, and it is so simple and easy to set up and to kind of get going and explain the rules. Apologies for my phone. That's where every time that I do a video, I forget to turn my phone off, and some distributor calls me or someone else. So anyway, let's go on to the other one that is now out. This one's called Point City. Point City is the kind of, if you were to mix Splender with Point Salad. So it's a very similar type of game where you have your market row, but it's going to be a bigger column or a bigger, basically a bigger grid, there we go, of cards. Instead of a 2x3, it's actually going to be a 4x4, I believe, of cards. And so it's very similar to Point Salad, where all of these things are different ingredients, I would say, but you're going to be using them throughout the game to actually build city cards. So it'll be the same concept. You'll have, well, actually how this one works is, if a resource is ever taken, then it is replaced by a building. And if a building's ever taken, it's replaced by a resource. And throughout the game, there will be different options, and you always have to take 2 cards that are next to each other if you're going to do an action on your turn. So on your turn, all you are doing is taking, like, you could take the 2 that are here. I mean, of course, there's more of a grid here. But if you wanted to take a building, you would have to have the resources to build it. So these are going into your, basically into your hand or into your resource pile. And then when you're ready to build off of the board here, you'd have to have these resources to build it. And so this one, for example, is worth 4 points. This one gives you these bonus tiles at the end of the game that work very similar to Point Salad. So you'll be able to acquire one of these, and it says, okay, for every building that generates a gear or a leaf, you get 3 points, or the pair. If you have for every pair of building and gears, you get a 3 points in the game. So again, they'll have their little set symbols up there, and it's like a Splender too, because once you have this built, this urban forest built, it's like always having a leaf towards buying a future card. So for example, this one will only cost you 2 coins and a leaf because you already have this built in your city. Throughout the game, you're going to be building a city that helps you. You can either go a couple different routes with this game. We've already found out some pretty cool strategy with this, where you can just try to score quick points quickly, and there are ways to end the game a little bit quicker before people can really engine build. Well, actually, it's going to go the exact same turns, but you can like kind of mess people up from and just try to score a lot of points as quickly as possible. Or you can go like a big engine build route where you're super efficient at building buildings towards the end of the game and finding these pairs to score points. And yeah, and then everything in between. You can do kind of a mix of the two. But again, what you're trying to do at the end of the game is just score the most points, and you get them by different buildings and these different point cards that come out. So this one was really, really cool because it merged the concepts of Splender and Point Salad together and made a really engaging game that I think is incredibly fun. In fact, I might do a more in-depth review of Point City, because this, I think, is my favorite board game of the year. It came out this year, and it's probably the one that I like the most because it's hard to judge. And this is why I'm giving this kind of category of board games, because I don't think you can really compare Point City to Ark Nova, for example, or Splendor to Terraforming Mars. I mean, at that point, they're just, the complexity of those games are so far away from each other that you have to be in certain moods to play, different things. And it's hard to say, oh, that, this game's better than Ark Nova, because, one is a very, very complex 3-hour-long game that is super engaging, super strategic. This one's just a quick pickup game where you pick it out, you play for 25 minutes and it's done. So that's, you have to kind of categorize them in their own spaces here, because it's not fair to do so. But I think overall a game that does the best for its genre, that is really like, again, pushed the envelope or created like kind of the best playable game for this year, I think I might pick Point City. It's that good of a game. I can't recommend it enough. Now let's go on to a very, very quick game. And a lot of people don't even call this a board game. This one's called Suro, the Game of Path. Now I think I've reviewed this one before. This is a quick tile placement game. So you have this board that is basically just a grid of spaces, and on your turn, all you do is you place a tile, and then your meeple has to go on that path. That's why it's called the Game of Path, and it has to follow the path. And then pretty soon you're going to get more and more tiles, like everyone's going to be placing tiles once per turn, that you're going to either run into each other, and if you run into someone you both lose, or you're going to eventually fall off the map. So it's just a game of who can stay on the map as quickly or as long as possible. And I mean, you think there's strategy. It's a pure chaos game. You have to be in the mood for pure chaos. You think there's strategy to it. Of course, there is some strategy to not, surviving as long as possible. But it gets really chaotic and crowded. But it's a really, really fun game that you're in a mood for, kind of an icebreaker game, or one that requires no thinking. Suro is definitely a fun. What do we call it? Like an intermission game. So in between like bigger board games, Suro is one like, or you're waiting for someone to, they have to go, I don't know, have to go home real quick, or, use the bathroom or whatever. I don't know what the excuse is they have to do between board games. You just need a little breather. Suro always comes to the table of like, okay, we're waiting on someone, 5 minutes, let's get Suro out. And again, it's a fun game to play with kids. It's a fun game to play with people that have played board games before or haven't played board games before. Suro, great Christmas gift idea for especially the non-gamer if you want to really introduce them to a board game that will not be intimidating. Now we're getting onto some of the meatier stuff that I think are still things that you can play with non-gamers and gamers alike. The first one is Sentry Spice, or Sentry. This is supposed to be Spice Roads. I grabbed the wrong one. I have one right here though because I have some overstock back here. So I'll grab this as things fall over the place, as I am too crowded in this store. Sentry Spice Roads. This is the game that got me into board games because it was just super engaging. I found strategy to it. It is very skill oriented, but people can still have fun and see people can still win even if they're not skilled with this because there is some luck to this game. So this is Sentry Spice Roads. It is a deck building game, but not really. It's like yes and no a deck building game. It's more of an engine building game. So you start with 2 cards in your hand. One of them just generates you 2 of the, I can't remember what the yellow spices are. And the other one upgrades your spices. So spices go in the order of yellow to red to green to brown as the most expensive ones. And you're trying to accumulate spices so that you can buy these trade routes that cost different spices to buy them. And then when someone has 5 or 6 cards, the game ends. So on your turn, you can play a card to generate the resources. You can pick up your discard pile back into your hand. You can recruit a new trader to help you trade different spices to accumulate the ones you need. Or you can buy a trade route. So again, it's very quick, it's very strategic, and it is actually has a lot more strategy to it than you'd think. And so this one definitely scratches the itch of like, I want to play a board game, but not a too complex one, but I still want some meat on the game. Sentry Spice Road is an absolute gem. You can get in a golem form if you don't like the historical aspect of it. They have a reskin for this called Sentry Golem, which is more of the what do you call it? Steampunk. But Sentry Spice Road, incredible game. I can't applaud this one enough. It makes the table quite often. Very, very good game. And they have like the Sentry Eastern Wonders. Like all of them are good. There's a trilogy of Sentry. So there's Sentry Spice Roads, Eastern Wonders, and I can't remember what they call the last one. But they use different mechanics to do the same thing. This one is a move your ship on the map to make the trades. And then you have to go to the ports to buy a point card at the end. But again, you're trying to accumulate resources, then go to ports, which is really, really fun. It works very similar to Spice Roads. And the other one's a worker placement, which is actually super, super good for a worker placement. So all of the Sentry trilogies are wonderful. Speaking of games that, by far the game that I play the absolute most, it's funny because the family I go play with every Sunday, they're on their 3rd copy of Splender now. It is worn out so many times just from shuffling the cards and playing the cards. The cards have been so worn out that we're on the 3rd copy of Splender. I think 4th copy, might be the 4th copy because my friend has one too. So his dad has 3. We're on his dad's 3rd copy, and then he also has 1. So they've purchased 4 Splenders from me. And this is my copy, which you can see is all beat up too because we played it a ton here. So Splender is just the perfect game. I'm going to say it right now. This is the perfect game. It's kind of an older game too. This is the Marvel version. I think the Marvel version is better than the original because it's a little more balanced. They've had the game triggering end is a little bit different. It's 1 more point, and you have to have 1 of every color, and you have to have a top tier card, which actually, if you understand Splender, if you played Splender, that actually is a big deal. So basing on your turn, all you are going to do is you're going to take 3 different gems of different colors, or you can take 2 of the same color if there's some rules of how you can do that action, or you can take a wild gem and reserve a card for a future buy. And what you're trying to do is there will be a row of each one of these cards with different level 1 are easy to get, and then level 2 are a little bit harder to get but give you points, and level 3 are very hard to get but they give you a lot of points. So for example, here's a level 1 card that requires 3 yellow gems. But as soon as you buy this and add this to your tableau, it's always going to be like having a blue gem to purchase future cards. So for example, this card requires a blue gem. If you were to have that one out, it would only require a yellow, an orange, and a red. And then as the tiers progress, they're a little bit harder, but they give you these points. And the game ends when someone gets 16 points. So you have to figure out how to get 16 points, 1 of every color, and 1 of these top tier cards that has this green Power Stone in it to complete the Infinity Gauntlet. There also is these little bonuses that if you ever have these cards, you just get this territory. So this one, if you have 3 yellow, 3 blue, or 3 red, you will get this territory. This one is really cool because if you have Avengers, which some of these cards have the little Avenger symbol, like this one here, this Hulk one has 2 Avengers, they if you ever get 3 of them, you claim this card, but if someone ever in their team has more Avengers than you, they get to steal this one. So again, that's why I like the Marvel version, because it adds that complexity to it as well, because it's got this Avenger chip that people are playing for. But this is just, I mean, I've watched a lot of videos, and I think that people don't get Splender. I think that if you haven't played it as much as I have, it might seem more luck-oriented and kind of out of your control, which is, there's a lot of luck in this with how cards turn over from the deck, and if you were able to get the right resources, sometimes, you know, you're just unlucky that the right cards that you start to build towards don't come, but this is a very strategic game where you can interact with your opponents quite a bit, because you can reserve the cards they're going after, you can take the chips that you know that they need to get, because look at these, this guy needs 6 chips, so they're going to have to get some cards to go towards it. So if you know they're going towards it, you can kind of mess with them. And I mean, it's one of those things where that's the interaction though. It's not like huge take that. It's not like I'm really trying to mess with them. You have to kind of like, of course, figure out your own strategy before you figure out your opponent's strategies. But this game is very well done. It's incredibly balanced on how it works. There's not like a strategy. What you have to do is you have to kind of look at what is available right now on the board and start to create what we call lines of like, okay, if I buy this card, then I would need these gems to then buy this card. And after I get this card, hopefully this card will still be here and I can start working towards that, and that will get me to where I need to get. So it's like almost like you do a little bit of math and planning. And then of course a wrench can be thrown into the mix if someone buys that card or their gems aren't available for you to get. Or you see someone going like there's bonuses and they're going to get these bonuses too quickly. Or like you have a couple of Avengers, now maybe the Avenger card might be worthwhile to try to protect or go for or steal. And this game is super, super strategic and complex, but the thing is it doesn't need to be for people that just want to enjoy it. So this is why I like to call Splender the perfect game. It is poker. It is just like how casual players all the way up to the professional level can enjoy poker. You can get extremely mathy with poker. And in fact, that's how, you know, the pros do it, where with bluffing and mathy. But the average Joe can just sit down and enjoy poker and feel like they're, you know, doing something or because and winning. You can still win with Splender just if, you know, the stars align and everything, you know, cards turn perfectly for you and whatnot. So I highly encourage, if you haven't tried Splender, don't pick up the regular Splender. I think that going Marvel Splender, and again, this is coming from someone that hates everything Marvel. Like, I cannot stand comic books, and Marvel especially, because it's just got so cringe and whatnot. It's just not for me. I've never been a big fan of like superhero, that type of genre. But as far as Splender is concerned, this is just a better, just a more complete game, in my opinion, than the OG Splender. So this one I highly, highly recommend. Alrighty, getting on to some of the other good ones that are more, kind of a little bit more difficult to find and more obscure. This one's called Project L. That I talked earlier that there was another Tetris theme game that I think people would enjoy. And this one is kind of like Splender, but you're using Tetris pieces to basically complete your tableau. And so same thing, the game ends when the tiles run out. And as soon as the tiles run out, then you score your points. And so what you're doing, what you start with is just 2 different Tetris pieces. You start with a little yellow piece and a little green piece, which has 2 spaces and 1 spaces, and you're trying to fill these boards. And so on your turn, you can take a board and add it to your tableau. You can place a piece on one of your tiles, or you can upgrade your piece to the next level, like the 1 pieces can turn into 2 pieces, 2 pieces can turn into 3 pieces, etc. So throughout the game, you're going to be trying to complete these, and as soon as you complete a puzzle, you get back all of your pieces plus the bonus tile for completing it. And as you go on, you're going to get points as well for completing some of these puzzles. So it's very Splender-esque is what I like to call it, because you are kind of creating an engine. You're trying to find the right pieces you need to create to solve the most puzzles in as little turns as possible, because the more puzzles you can complete, the more points you can score. But you have to kind of be careful of trying to engine build too much and try to get too many pieces, because the game will end quicker than you think it's going to end, because the tiles do run out. And so you have to time that right to where, okay, this is what I need to start working towards. These are the ones I want to complete. Let's see if I can get, X amount done before the game ends and be as efficient as possible. A lot of these games you can see are very, very what we call efficiency games, like engine build efficiency games of being the most efficient you can be with your turn. I mean, that's what I put the Project L's, the Splenders, and definitely the Sentries in that category. Okay, and we have, last but not least, this another very, very fun, fast, Splender-esque game. This one's called Reef. Reef is another fun little game where you're trying to build onto your reef and then score your reef. So you have these different reef pieces that you're going to be placing on your board, and on your turn you are going to be playing a card. So you're going to be drawing a card or playing a card. And so this card, for example, is going to put 2 purple onto your reef, and then you're going to score every yellow and orange coral that is next to each other in your reef in this pattern. You get 3 points per ones that are next to each other. And so but you have to put these purples first. So you have to figure out where to put these, and you have a hand of like 4. So you have to figure out where to put these on your board, and then to not mess up scoring points with these. And so there are a lot of strategies with Reef, because you do have like a hand of 4, so you can start like hoarding certain things and be like, okay, I'm going to try for this card to score a lot of points, because for this one, for every green surrounding one of my purples, I'm going to get 2 points. And so I'm going to look for a lot of green cards. I'm going to hold on to this card in my hand for a while. I'm going to try to find cards that give me double greens, and like there's none of them there because it's probably needs shuffled. So I'm going to try to find cards like this so I can throw out and not worry about scoring it, throw out these greens, and eventually I'm going to try to score a lot of points on this one. And then you have to do that like, okay, I mean, because again, this is the game ends when one color is gone. So when all of these colors of coral are gone. So again, you have to pay close attention to that and try to optimize how you're playing your cards and scoring your points. So again, Reef is an incredibly fun game. I'm surprised it's not more well known, or like the Splenders and Azules type game, or the Catans. Speaking of which, I'm not a fan of Catan. I think it's actually outdated for a game. I think this one's a much better game than Catan, but this one's perfect. This one's a very, very fun game that I think is enjoyed by gamers and non-gamers alike. All right, we got through this in a little over half an hour. I hope everyone enjoys this style of video. I apologize for kind of being all over the place. Again, one of these days I want to get more edited, but I think people, I have a lot of experience now playing in a board game group for years and years and years, and also running a store and selling board games, that I think I can help direct you towards, games that might be your cup of tea. And now, like, I don't like party games, I don't like social deduction games, I don't like a lot of things, but I can still kind of lead you towards, if you are into those type of games, I can point you towards ones that I think would make good Christmas gifts, or good gifts for, or just good games for your collection in general. So if you're a patron, reach out to me and I can give you pricing on all of these. Or if you just have any question about board games, of course, I love talking them. And again, this is the whole reason I love owning a game store, is kind of sharing this love of board games with others. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with Gonro Games. Thanks for watching.